Congratulations, you did it. You found your forever partner. And you may be wondering, how do we ensure that this marriage will last the test of time? Well, today, I want to share with you a little known secret that, if harnessed correctly, will help your marriage not only survive for the long term, but also will help you be able to maintain that love and connection that you once felt on your wedding day. And if that kind of stuff interests you, well, then come on in, pour up a cup, and let's get into it. What's going on, family? My name is Justin, and I'm a therapist in real life, specifically a marriage and family therapist. And today, I want to share with you a little known secret about how to not only have your marriage last in the long term, but also how to meet life's challenges together, maintaining through the ups and the downs. In a previous video, I mentioned how I believe the 8th year of marriage is the most important. But how exactly do we have the right mindset to carry us not only to the 8th year mark, but to the 10-year, the 20-year, and beyond? Well, it all starts with the way that we think about change and how it happens in the context of our marriage. Many times, for many different reasons, people will begin to believe that if you once have had a strong, emotionally dense connection in a good way, that the idea of that somehow changing or shifting can be threatening or difficult to think about. However, it will happen, and that does not necessarily mean that it's entirely a bad thing or entirely a good thing. It is a thing, though. And as we think about these things in the context of our marriage, what we really need to hone in on is the idea that change is inevitable. Change not only in your marriage, but also within you as a person. I'd like for you to think back for just a second about the person that you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. How many things are different now than they were back then? How many things have you changed your position on? Or how many ways have you recognized personal and individual growth? Now, broadcast that out over the next 10 years or 15 or 20 years. How much difference do you think will be in between those two times, between who you are now and who you will be then? And in the process of not only yourself progressing in meaningful ways, your partner is also progressing in meaningful ways. And so, because of that, the two of you, in the shape of your connection, will also have to evolve and change in response to new information that the marriage will encounter over time. Lots of times, this idea of marital transition is seen with just the identifying of a few specific events. Maybe the loss of a job, or the gaining of a child, or the need to up and relocate for whatever reason, or maybe experiencing challenges in the extended family. Lots of things like that are clearly identifiable as everything changed or pivoted once this small event or major event happened. However, the way that change works, just like how you look back and compare yourself to who you were 5 years ago, that change between who you were then and who you are now may have had one or two bigger things, but the process of change was gradual. And it happened through meeting somewhat small and relatively at the time insignificant challenges on a repeated pattern that shaped the way you oriented yourself. And that same process has to happen in marriage as well. I cannot tell you how many times I've done couples counseling where what the crux of the issue really is that the way one or both partners find reassurance, or with the way that both of them approach self-care, or the way that they've changed their stances on matters of finance or matters of marital roles, how that has been the crux of the matter, that things have shifted and the marriage now has to shift and account for that shifting in the individual person. So as we think about the long-term marriage, we need to be able to think about how change is inevitable, and not only change within the marriage, but change within us individually, and as well as change in our partner. Once we can account for that, then we can anticipate this change and see it not as a threat, but as a thing that can be harnessed and used to strengthen our connection. I'm a really big fan of having check-in times. And for the sake of this video, I like to just recommend maybe a 6-month check-in mark where you and your partner can sit down across the table from one another or wherever you are and have conversations like a meeting of sorts, but as a way to center and facilitate around your connection with one another. Sit down and talk about how do you feel about this connection that both of you share. How do you feel about the way the marriage is progressing? How do you feel about the way that upcoming life transitions might create some challenges in the short term? And how can we together adjust for that possibility? If we're thinking about financial difficulties, how can we rally around that? If we're thinking about adding children to the mix, how can we begin to prepare for that? And just understanding that these changes are going to come. And by having these check-in times, by having these moments where we sit down and embrace change together, then we can not only prepare for it, but we can also maintain a sense of connection. Remember that whether it's a transition point, whether it's gradual change, or whether it's one isolated event that needs to be prepared for or has already been experienced, it's never you versus your partner. It's you and your partner versus whatever the challenge might be. And if we can harness that type of way of thinking, then also incorporate these regular check-ins, then having these difficult conversations won't be a result of an event that causes lots of chaos. Instead, we've done all that work in the beginning, and now we can reap the benefits of having a strategy and also maintaining and fulfilling a solid connection. There are many things that can come about in your time as a married couple. And so when those challenges get uniquely difficult, I definitely have to recommend coming to a professional to assist you in that process. And although there are a little bit more I'd like to say about that, I do need to take a second just to say that if this kind of content interests you, then come follow us over at Mental Caffeine on both Spotify and YouTube. So the last thing I'd like to share with you before I let you go today is to remember that not only is change inevitable, not only is connection important to continue to facilitate, it's also super important that you identify the different stages that a marriage needs to go through. And in my previous video of why year 8 is the most important, I cover that more in detail. So with that, I hope that you can have this kind of mindset, approach your partner and create these check-ins, and make sure that you center it on the idea of maintaining and continuing to foster a fantastic connection. Well, family, that's all I have for you today. And so if you like this kind of stuff, like I mentioned, give us a like, give us a follow, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.